Well, welcome into the Atlanta Born and Brand Studios. A little bit of a different look for our friend William Warren today. William, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. This is exciting.
Absolutely. It's very exciting, man. We've got William, a founder of the Sketch Effect, but
Yep.
also burgeoning author.
That's
So
right, brand new author.
We're going to talk about that. And, it used to, when we were growing up, I thought, you had to be at least like 50 to be an author. And that's changing for the better, I think.
Right.
So excited to hear about that process. But William, the first question we like to ask people on the show is, you meet somebody, new at a networking event or, at a friend's party, and they ask you, William, what do you do? Your answer to that question is what?
Well, my fun answer is I get to doodle for a living.
Nice.
Basically. The serious answer, though, is I founded and run a company called the Sketch Effect, and we consider ourselves a visual communication solutions provider. So what does that mean? We basically help our clients communicate their ideas more effectively, more efficiently, and in a more entertaining way through visuals, animation, infographics, graphic design, and then our most well-known service is a thing called graphic recording. And what graphic recording is, it's kind of like doodling. We basically go to client events, we set up a canvas in the room, and we have artists, and while the event is taking place, our artists are actively listening to the content of that meeting, synthesizing it in real time, and then visually transcribing it onto the canvas. Basically literally drawing out the big ideas in colorful pictures, in icons, in images, text, typography, basically creating a visual diagram of what they talked about at this meeting. And so, yeah, we travel all over the United States, even beyond to other countries to sketch at these mostly corporate events, but we'll do nonprofit events, we'll do educational events. And so, yeah, it's a lot of fun. We basically get to draw for a living and help other people communicate better through drawing.
So many questions about the Sketch Effect, but I want to rewind a little bit. So this show is Atlanta Born and Brand, all about businesses and people that have kind of grown up in this city and have experienced, the transformation of what Atlanta has been over the last few decades. We talked a little bit before the interview. You're a local. Talk about growing up in the area, and how did you first find that love? I can picture the story in my head now, but I'm interested to see with you how it plays out. Were you the guy, third, fourth grade, that the teacher was like, William, eyes up?
Oh yeah.
How did that go out for you?
Yeah, so love Atlanta. We live in the best city. Atlanta's incredible. It's only getting better and better and better as more people are coming here and things are happening. And I loved growing up in Atlanta. Grew up in kind of the Sandy Springs area, for those who know that. And yeah, I was always drawing in school. I mean, always, from a young age. And I had some teachers who encouraged it, and others who were more like, hey, you need to stop doodling and pay attention.
Right.
Little did they know that one day I would start a business which was all about doodling.
You were just training.
Yeah, I was just training. I was just getting ready. But yeah, I mean, from a young age, I knew I wanted to have a career drawing in some way. And so originally that dream was to be a cartoonist and to make comic strips, kind of like Calvin and Hobbes or Charlie Brown or, The Far Side or something. And then over the years, that dream kind of morphed as I kind of, journeyed on my professional journey, and now we get to draw basically comics, but for corporations and businesses.
Yeah. So I think you went to SCAD, right?
I did, yeah, for my master's.
And I don't know if that's, I think people have different experiences with SCAD depending on what they came for and kind of, if their goals change while they were there. How was that experience for you and just sort of refining your craft there?
Yeah, I loved it. So I went to the Savannah, the Atlanta campus of Savannah College of Art and Design and got a master's degree in illustration. And so I felt like I really honed my skills there. I really got better at my craft and was able to kind of level up my own abilities. It wasn't until after I left SCAD, though, that I started to figure out the business side of things, which is a totally different animal. I mean, most creatives, we are really good at our thing, or we really love our thing. Obviously, that's why we do it, whether it's film or podcasting or drawing. We're really good at that. We spend a lot of time and energy getting good at that thing, but the business side of things sometimes gets neglected. We're not as naturally wired for the business side of things. And so that's been my journey for the last 10 years as I've been running my own creative business, is sort of figuring out how to do business well.
Well, I empathize
Yeah,
with
right.
you in a great way.
Yep.
And we're going to talk a lot about that because that's a big piece of the book, The Conquering Creative, that you're releasing now. But you leave SCAD. I think you go into the professional world for a while working
Yep.
for somebody else, right?
Right,
Talk
exactly.
about that experience and why maybe ultimately it wasn't for you, but the positives that you took from it as well.
So as I was about to graduate from SCAD, and this is a story in the book, I was terrified at the idea of running a business. I was terrified of the idea of being in the real world, being on my own, having to do all this, quote, business stuff. And yeah, I was petrified by it. To me, business was three things. Business was boring, it was overwhelming, and it was scary. And I was like, I don't want to do it. And so even though I went to school to get a master's degree in illustration, I kind of did a 180 and ran the other way. I got on Google and I searched for quote unquote normal jobs or like real jobs, and was able to get a entry-level part-time contract marketing role at a big company in Atlanta. And to me, it felt like a safer, easier route versus going on my own and having to run my own business as a creative. And so I was there for about 2.5 years, and in hindsight, I was really grateful for my experience because I learned, in a nutshell, that business was not as scary, boring, overwhelming as I thought it was going to be. I learned that there were a lot of things that I was actually like pretty good at, like thinking about brand and thinking about product and things like that. There were things that I could learn and I could get better at, and there were things that if I wasn't good at it, I could find help from other people to help me with it.
Sure.
So I almost consider my 2.5 years in that marketing job as sort of my business school, my condensed business school, because I'd never taken a business class in my life. I never read a business book in my life, but here I was working in this big business. And so yeah, I consider that kind of like my business incubator, I guess, if you will.
Yeah, and it's important to have an experience like that, whether it's through your career or through schooling. I don't think either of those necessarily prepares you for everything,
Right.
And all the things that you're going to face as a small business owner and as
Exactly.
an entrepreneur. But it's better than diving into the deep end and not knowing anything.
Of course.
So it's awesome to be able to watch people and ask questions,
Yep.
especially if you can build those relationships in that type of a setting that, you know, the people are approachable and
Right.
you can come and ask questions and say, hey, you know, where are you going here? Why did you make this decision? That type of stuff.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
super helpful. So in reading up on you guys, I saw Sketch Effect starts in 2013.
Right.
So
About
I guess
10 years ago. Yeah.
which is incredible, by the
It's
way.
wild. It's wild. It's flown by.
The stats are not for us; they're against us, and businesses that make it 5 years, much less 10.
Right.
But what was that tipping point for you of working in that job on the marketing side and saying, "Okay, I'm ready"? Was there? Did you do it as a side hustle for a while? What did that journey look like for you?
So the Sketch Effect journey is one of something I did for fun, turning into a hobby, turning into a side hustle, turning into a main hustle, and then turning into a business.
Right.
It happened very organically, and I'll tell the story real quick. So when I was in that corporate job, in order to have a creative outlet, because my role was not that creative. It was creative in that we were doing marketing and we were doing content and stuff, but I wasn't getting to draw. I wasn't getting to sketch. I wasn't getting to do my creative thing I loved.
Yeah.
So in order to have an outlet in that job, I started to sketch during meetings. I started to doodle during meetings like I did in school when I was a kid and all through college. And so I'd be in this meeting or training, whatever it was, and I would have a sketchbook. And instead of taking normal notes, I would take visual notes, sketch notes. And maybe if we were in a smaller meeting and it was an appropriate time to do it, I would hop up on a whiteboard and I would do my notes visually on the whiteboard for people to watch. And that was fun and people enjoyed it. And then, if I had a presentation to give, I would sketch out my concepts and scan them in and put them into a PowerPoint. And then I would deliver my presentation with these sketches I made. And for me, that was just a creative outlet. That was just a way for me to inject a little bit more creativity in my day-to-day of that job. However, the magic started to happen when I realized that people around me were finding value in what I was bringing to that meeting context.
Right.
They were taking pictures of my notes. They would take pictures of the whiteboard, and they would say, "That's amazing. Like you're helping me understand these ideas better." And then people around the organization started to ask me if I could come to their meetings, come to their team sessions, and do the whiteboard sketching thing for
Right.
them too. And thankfully, I had a cool boss at the time, and he said, "As long as you get your work done, go for it." So I started to float around the organization to like supply chain or HR or IT and sketch for their meetings. And then people outside of the organization saw what I was doing and said, "Hey, we'll pay you to come do this. We'll even buy you a flight. We'll buy you a hotel room."
Wow.
And so I took a couple PTO days and did some gigs, my first gigs. This was before I even had an LLC. Did some gigs traveling to places like Dallas or Orlando or DC to go and do the sketching thing for other people. And that's when I realized there could be a real business here. Like this is something, I realized that I had a skill, that there was a need in the marketplace, and that there were people who were willing to pay me money to do my creative thing. And that's just when everything exploded.
Right.
And so, yeah, after I gave my 2 weeks notice. Actually, I think I gave a longer. I think I gave like a 6-week notice because I wanted to wind down well.
Right.
So I gave my notice that I was leaving, and I started the Sketch Effect in the fall of 2013, and we've grown ever since, every year. We had our ups and downs, but we've had a great 10-year run, and hopefully we'll have many more decades of success ahead of us.
Were you able to turn former employer into client?
Yes,
down the line?
we
Love
did.
that.
So,
Yes.
so the client is Chick-fil-A. That's who I used to work for. Amazing brand.
I knew it was. I was just waiting to see if you wanted to share it. I didn't want to force you
Yeah,
into
yeah,
it.
incredible brand.
Yeah.
I have incredible relationships with Chick-fil-A to this day, and they became our first client.
Wow.
Which is a great client to start off with.
So appropriate for this podcast as
Yeah,
well. How about
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
massive fan, both of the food and the people at that organization. But yeah, so my first 2 clients at the gate were Chick-fil-A, because I left in such a way that it preserved the relationship.
Sure.
And that's one of the lessons in the book, which is like if you're gonna leave, if you're gonna leave your job, you can leave in a way that burns bridges and does damage and ruins relationships, or you can leave in a way where the relationship is stronger on the other side.
That's right.
And so when I left Chick-fil-A, I literally left on a Thursday, and I came back on a Friday working for myself. It was incredible. And the other first client we started off with was the church that my wife and I attend. And so started off with 2 clients, and then literally just built the business from that. And if you do well, if you do a great job with the opportunities you're given, then more will come. People love working with great companies and great people. And if you do a great job and you do what you say you're going to do and you're nice to work with,
Right.
then it'll grow. And that was the story of the Sketch Effect.
Sure. Well, and there's also a lesson there for business owners like yourself and myself now in working with employees that they have, of setting a culture that, yes, you're doing a job for us, but also setting a culture that encourages people to develop professionally towards a goal, right? And
Yep.
so you weren't there to train to go run your own business, but you started gathering these skills.
Yep.
Like you said, you did a really good job of leaving well and preserve that relationship. But there are businesses that have cultures that say, if you walk out this door, you're never coming back in any form or context, and it's a toxic environment sometimes when you feel just sort of hostage to your job,
Right.
And it's tough. So a great lesson for us now as entrepreneurs ourselves. So you said something that was interesting in talking about kind of what people started to latch onto with the beginning of that graphic recording. I think in reading about your journey, I just sort of assumed that the illustration and the animation came first and the graphic recording was sort of, an aha moment you had down the line. But it sounds like that's really what rooted things for you.
Yeah, it was one of our launch products, I guess. And I'll just say we launched with about 10 products, and now we do 2. So that's another lesson for creatives who are building their own businesses. Try a lot of things, see what sticks, see what doesn't. But yeah, the graphic recording was one of our first services we offered. And to this day, it's
awesome.
it's probably what we're best known for. It's
Sure.
the event sketching.
Well, and part of what you just talked about is that, that safety net that we try to create early on in building businesses of, okay, we can do 10 things.
Yeah.
If you need any of these 10 things, we're your
I'm your
people.
guy. I'm your girl.
Yeah,
I'll do
that's
whatever.
right. That's right. And as you go on, you're like, okay, people really want these 2 things.
Yeah.
And we're really much better at these 2 things than we are the other 8.
Yep.
So, yes, and not that offering more at the beginning is the wrong thing to do, because I
Right.
think, a lot of people, that's how they figure out what they're really good at.
That's right.
So
Yeah,
that's
you got to go
awesome.
wide first, and then as soon as you realize what's working, what's not working, then you want to go narrow and go
Right.
all in on that. And it is difficult as creatives. You're a creative, I'm a creative. It's difficult because sometimes we want to be everything to everyone and say, oh, I can do this and that and this and that. And as you said, that's okay in the beginning, but it's not a long-term sustainable business model, just being kind of the person that does everything for everyone.
Jack of all trades, master of none. Right?
Exactly.
Well, and there's a ceiling on, I think, how high you can go in any one of those services.
Right.
Like we talk a lot about in our business of video production, kind of narrowing in on, the things that we do really well in order to be able to climb the ladder in the industry, opinions of people who say, okay, documentary style content, like this is the company we want to go to. Commercial production, these are the companies that we want to go to. They're not calling the guy that's like, we do 15 things and we're a C+ at every one of them.
Yep, exactly.
And so it's a lesson we all have to learn. Okay, from these skills that you have, in illustrating, and doing the graphic recording in your old job, to starting a business, to at what point are you like, okay, I can't do this by myself anymore?
Yeah.
Did you start off with some people in mind, or did that come later, and how long before that was a necessity for you?
So there were three things that happened that compelled me to grow a team and to scale. The first one was just that necessity, which is that I had a client who wanted me to come sketch their event, and they had 3 breakout sessions happening at the same time. And they said, we want you to sketch the breakout sessions. And I said, that sounds great, but I can't be in 3 places at once.
Right.
So that circumstance necessitated me, or it required me to hire artists. So reached out to a couple creative people I knew. One of them, his name is Jai, is still on our team, does amazing work. And I said to these guys, hey, do you want to come with me to Florida to do this like sketching thing? It's really weird and strange, and we're going to be in the meeting room with all these, fancy people in suits and ties, and we're going to draw what they say. And they were like, let's do it. So that was the first thing that happened, was just the product necessitated that I hire people. The second thing is that I just am a people person. I love working with people. Right. I realized when I was in my previous job that was something I really valued, was being surrounded by other people. I didn't want to ever be a lonely creative working by myself in my basement. Do I like a solo day every now and then? Sure, I do. But in general, I'd rather work with people than by myself. So I knew I wanted to hire a team long term. But then the third thing that happened, and probably the thing that really kicked my butt and made me start to hire and scale up, was that my wife told me that we were going to have a kid. And so I was like, this is back in 2015. Right. We're like, oh yeah, we're gonna have a kid. This is our first kid. We've got 3 now. And she basically said, you're working long weeks, 80-hour weeks, 70-hour weeks. You're traveling a lot. Yep. This has got to change, basically. And so it was those kind of 3 things that happened around, over the course of a few years, that I thought we got to really scale up. And so it was really in 2015 was the year, so about 2 years into running the Sketch Effect, that we hired our first full-time team member. We hired some more artists. We got an office space, and we started to deliberately scale. And then the next year, I hired my first full-time operations person, hired our first full-time salesperson.
Game changer.
And that was when it just, like we were growing, but then at that point is when it just sort of hockey stick and started shooting up.
Yeah. Lesson for creatives. You're probably not the ops person.
Yes.
Like find your
Yeah.
ops person quickly.
Yep.
Our ops person is in the next room.
Oh, praise ops people.
Most valuable person on our team.
Yeah.
No offense to any of our other team members.
Yep.
But it's so important just to have those things. Not only to have those things, your ducks in a row there, but the stress that takes off you, and especially as a creative, the space that gives you to be creative.
Yes.
I think is just so vital. So
Yep.
yes, another important lesson for you young creatives out there.
Yeah. Find someone who's good at processes and
That's
systems and details.
Right. Another life
And forms.
That's forms are a big deal. Google Docs.
Yeah.
Yes, use them.
Yep.
Yes. Another lesson I want to pull out of that, the story you were just telling and the things that compelled you to grow your team. There's a quality of life piece that, again, as creatives, I think we can be naturally just so bent towards put your head down and grind and grow.
Yep.
You know, there's this insatiable appetite for the next job or the next level of work. And sometimes we need the significant others in our lives to pull the choke collar a little bit and say, hey, slow down. And when we don't have that, for those of you listening to the podcast that don't have that, it's good to have other creatives like you and I who have those significant others in our lives to say, hey, slow and steady wins the race. There's such an emphasis, I think, right now in the entrepreneurial world of being ready to scale super quickly.
Yep.
And if those are your goals and ambitions, you know, I guess that's great to do that. But doing that at the expense of your mental health, of your physical health a lot of times is like that's a real challenge. And it sounds like the long hours you were working, the traveling, did you experience that? Or were you starting to get that little bit of a burnout feeling, and how did you combat that?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, when you're running your own thing, there's this sense of like, I just got to work harder. I got to hustle more. Got to put a little more time, a little more energy into it. I mean, there's this kind of rampant hustle culture out there. And look, I'm a massive believer in working hard. Like I work really hard, but to your point, you can't work so hard to the point where you burn out and you just implode.
Sure.
And so I'll tell a quick story, which is that around that time that my wife gave me the ultimatum on scaling down my hours, there was two things that happened. One, I remember it was the night before my grandfather's funeral. I had to stay. It was a Friday night. I had to stay up until 3:30 to finish a client project because I wanted to make my deadline. And then I spent 3:30 to 4:30 writing my eulogy.
Wow.
And then went home, slept for about 2 hours, and then gave the eulogy the next morning, and just like in a puddle of tears.
Right.
Because one, I love my grandfather, I was gonna miss him, but two, I was just burned out.
Right.
I was like, I had nothing left in the
Exhausted.
tank.
Yeah.
Totally exhausted. Another thing that happened is that my brother and I were planning a trip to go to Vietnam. We've been planning it for a long time. I love traveling. It's my favorite thing to do. I was very excited about the trip, but I had so much on my plate because I was doing everything. I was doing the operations. I was doing the sales. I was doing the creative work. I was doing everything that I almost canceled the trip because I just felt like I had too much on my plate. Thankfully, I didn't. I still went, but I remember at the time I had a part-time administrative assistant, and I had a couple of contractors that I worked with, people that did film and animation.
Yeah.
And I said, I got to go on this trip. I'm not going to check my email. You guys respond to my clients. If there's anything that comes up, I want you to handle it as best as you can. And I turned my email off and I went away for 10 days. And I came back and I realized, hey, things...
It didn't burn down.
It didn't burn down. Like
Right.
the business is still here. Our clients don't hate me. You know, like we still, we're still making progress. And of course, there's horror stories when you delegate and hand it off to other people. But in that case, I learned that I could not stay in this burnout mode forever. I had to get a team around me. And I learned that it was doable. Like there are other people that could do these parts of my business and do it well and probably better than me.
Right.
And so all of that kind of happened around the same season. And since then, my quality of life has been a lot better. And to this day, I work about 40 hours a week, maybe less sometimes, maybe a little bit more. But I get to spend time with my kids, my family.
That's right.
And none of that would have been possible had I not taken strategic steps to scale out of this kind of hustle mode into more strategic mode.
Sure. Well, and the foundation for your business is stronger, is not always stronger by scaling more quickly.
Right.
Doing it very intentionally, like you said, hiring, the cliche is hire slow and fire fast.
Right.
Right. So that's the fire fast thing is debatable in some angles, I think, but I 100% believe in the hire slow of find somebody that matches. Like you said, find somebody whose strengths complement your weaknesses.
Right.
Right. Whether it's that ops person you're talking about. I'm interested to hear your perspective on the creative piece because that's the house you're living in. Was it hard for you to find, okay, this is my style and this is how I do the graphic recording piece, this is how I illustrate. Was it hard for you to find somebody that you felt like fit into kind of the sketch effect mold, or did you see that as an opportunity to sort of expand on what you're doing?
Yeah, fantastic question. So that's probably one of the hardest things about scaling a creative business is to find people that can come in and do the creative work in a way that matches your vision or matches the look and feel, the quality you expect. So that has been a challenge for us, and it still is a challenge. It's probably one of our hardest obstacles as we scale is finding amazing illustrators who can do this interesting service in a way that we consider high quality. But I did do a couple of things. One is I kind of examined what I was doing and I tried to codify things. I tried to say, okay, how am I doing typography? How am I doing color? How am I creating my color palettes? And I tried to systematize as much of that creative process as I could and put some boundaries around it. And so at the Sketch Effect, what we did specifically with our graphic recorders, our live sketch artists, is we said, hey, we're going to train you in our style. We're going to train you how to do color the way we do color, how to do icons the way we do icons, visual elements we like to use a lot, and other things. We're going to codify everything and we're going to teach you how to do that. But then within that kind of framework, you have creative liberties to draw what you want to draw, to be yourself, to put your own unique touch on it. And so I think we've kind of struck that balance of, we got, right now I think we have 10 or 11 graphic recorders on our team. And when you look at their work, if you are a trained artist, you might be able to spot differences in kind of how they do certain things. But if you're kind of our typical client who might not have an art degree, who just wants to see a great sketch, you might not notice a difference between all the different artists.
Yeah, it feels like Sketch Effect.
It feels like a cohesive Sketch Effect brand look and feel. And that's been really fun to get there. And it hasn't always been easy. And we're always walking the line between how much do we codify things or how much do we allow for creative freedom.
Right.
But I think right now we've hit a good sweet spot.
Yeah, it's important to do a lot of both, I would imagine, in your business. William, the building of a business is hard. Writing a book is hard. You've just gone on this journey, and we want to share it with our video audience today. The Conquering Creative, and of course the cover is gorgeous. I mean, it's got to be right. It's one of those things that if you had a boring book cover, we'd be like, wow, this doesn't line up. 9 shifts to build an unstoppable creative business. What struck you that made you think, all right, this is something I want to do, and talk to me about the process of getting into it.
Yeah, so I have always known I wanted to write a book. Ever since I was a kid drawing in school, I was like, I'm going to write a book. And originally the idea was I'm going to write an adventure book or a comic book or whatever. I knew I wanted to create books one day, and I still want to create more. And so, but I had to start with something, and I was advised by a mentor to write about what you know. And so after almost 10 years of running a creative business, I realized I should write a business book for creative people. And so that's what this book is. It's a business book for creative people, the kind of people that might not normally read a business book, the kind of people that have maybe never picked up a business book in their life. And you mentioned the cover. It's like I wanted this cover not to look like a business book. I wanted it to look like some kind of epic adventure.
Yeah, it looks like a great story.
Because that's who I was. I was a creative who never read a business book, and I was terrified of running a business. I didn't want anything to do with it. But over the last 10 years, I've learned that not only is it not as hard as you think it is, it can unlock some incredible dreams. It can pave the way to a great life, a life full of fulfillment, of goals, of achievements, of things you conquer. And so that's the idea of the conquering creative.
Right.
A conquering creative I define as a creative who is not only excellent at their craft, but excellent at the business of their craft. And like we talked about at the beginning of this interview, most creatives aren't naturally wired to do the business side of things. But if you want to be a professional creative, whether you want to work for a company or you want to start your own business or full-time freelance or have a side hustle, you got to figure out some of this business stuff.
Right.
If you don't, then unfortunately you don't get to do your creative thing for long. You got to go back and get a job. You got to get, wait tables or, whatever it is. And then your creative thing just becomes a hobby.
Right.
Which is fine for some people. But for those of us that want to make money doing our creative thing, we got to clear this bar of business. And so this book exists to help people clear that bar, to be equipped in certain ways, to gain some knowledge, but also just to gain some encouragement that they can do it. It's not as hard as they think they can. It's not as hard as they think it is.
Well, and I'm excited to read the book, but I'm excited for a couple of different outcomes for people who read it. One is, like you said, it's going to demystify starting a business for so many creatives, and I think that's so important. The second outcome is a creative could read this, and like you said, they could decide, okay, all that's great for some people, it's not for me.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm gonna be the number one illustrator on somebody else's team.
Yep.
For forever, or the number one filmmaker on somebody else's team moving forward, and I'm just gonna be freed up to do what I love and not worry about that. And both of those outcomes are great. Right? Because get in a place that you can be comfortable, like we were talking about. You can live the lifestyle you want. You can hang out with your family. You can raise your kids. All those things are byproducts of just finding the right spot for you. So
exactly.
Excited to read The Conquering Creative, William, and excited to hear what reactions you get from folks that are reading the book. You just talked about having a launch party this week as we're recording this. Early feedback and early reception from folks that you've put this in front of. How's that been for you?
It's been incredible. That's been probably one of the most rewarding parts of the process, is seeing the people that have rallied around this project, seeing the people that have come out to support it, people that I haven't talked to in years, find out about it, like, this is awesome, I want to get a copy. And yeah, we had a great launch event earlier this week. Had a good number of people show up, talked about the book, and really just spent that time to thank the launch team. And early reviews are strong. Currently, we got like 35 5-star reviews on Amazon from people.
That's awesome.
It's an Amazon bestseller, which is quite I'm just amazed. But yeah, I've got friends and family that are texting me photos of the book as it arrives in the mail and saying, "God, it looks great. Can't wait to read it."
Awesome.
And it's been really, really humbling thing to just be supported by such a great tribe to make this book, this project, a reality.
You talked about writing a book being something you always wanted to do. Has this experience scratched that itch enough for you to propel you to the next one?
Oh, I'm already thinking of the next 3 books.
Nice.
But don't tell my wife, because she's like, once this is done, you need to just chill out for a little bit, because there were a lot of late nights, weekend work to get it done by the deadline. But of course, I got a lot of other ideas. Even follow up business book ideas, and then other ideas too. Like I said, my first love was illustration and drawing, and so I'd love to see where that goes. See what other books could come out of that.
Your wife sounds like a very practical lady.
Yes. We complement each other very well. She is the
Thankful for
organized, disciplined one, and I am kind of the dreamer, like, ooh, I should go chase that idea or go explore there.
Sure. She keeps you grounded in a great way, it sounds like.
That's my best bit of business advice, is marry well or find a great partner who complements your skills, because there's lonely dark days, and having that support to come home to is just, is invaluable.
Yeah, and you need both. You know, you need a cheerleader, you need an advocate. You also need someone to tell you when you're screwing it up.
Yeah.
In a very loving and gentle way.
Exactly.
And, you know, varying degrees of gentle.
Of course.
Of course.
Yep.
But yes, well, The Conquering Creative by William C. Warren. Check it out if you are creative. I want to finish up with a question. We talked about dad of 3, happily married, running a business. The sketch effect, I think what it is now, you could be headquartered anywhere. And you could run that business from New York City. You could run it from LA. You could run it from a cabin in Colorado. You guys have chosen to hang out here in Atlanta and do the sketch effect thing here. I'm sure you're traveling a bit, and your illustrators are traveling. Why still Atlanta for you? What is it about the city that makes you stay and call this place home?
Yeah, Atlanta's awesome. I'm such a big fan of this city. We are a big city, but with how do I phrase it? Kind of small town charm, I guess. You know, I mean, I think last I checked, Atlanta is maybe the 7th largest city in the country, maybe 8th, depending on your measure. And so we're a big city. We got big city amenities, sports, great shows. I mean, Taylor Swift was just here doing 3 nights. Like, she's not going to come to, I don't want to insult any small. Yeah, she's not going to go to, I don't know, some random town in Wisconsin.
Right.
You know. So we got these big city amenities. We got a great airport. I love traveling. I love that I can just drive 30 minutes to the airport, hop on a plane, and be in another country in a matter of hours. So I love that. But at the same time, we have small town charm. I mean, I live in a great little neighborhood, and we know our neighbors, and we walk to the park, and we just have a great lifestyle. It's a great place to raise kids, great place to grow a family. And so to me, it's just that sweet spot of like big city amenities, big city things that we can do, but also it's still the kind of place where it's nice to raise a family and just kind of slow down a little bit.
Absolutely. And you said something I thought was right on point. It's a city that keeps getting better.
Yeah.
And that doesn't always mean...
It's a growing, thriving place.
That's right. And it doesn't always mean, taller buildings or, the newest, flashiest thing. Our city has a checkered past in a lot of ways. And we've worked through that, and you see, just people loving each other well all over the city in so many ways. And that's one thing we love about this podcast is talking to some of those folks. And I'm so glad to hear you've had a similar experience. And William, we wish you all the best, not only with the sketch effect, but with the Conquering Creative and version 2 and version 3 and
eventually,
whatever is next there. And as always, let us know if there's anything we can do to help.
Of course. Thanks. This is a great conversation. Love talking about these ideas.
Same.
Creativity, small business, books, art, all of it. And so hopefully this was valuable to your audience.
Absolutely. I'm sure it will be. And one thing we have a habit of doing on this show is having people back. So
yeah, anytime.
When book number 2 comes out, you have to give us a call.
Of course.
Awesome, William.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Coming by.
Love it.